Hey everybody, my name is Jason and this is Crime on the Record. In this podcast episode, we're going to talk about the homicide of Aliza Sherman. Now, this happened in 2013, and although it seems like one of those cases that should have been solved pretty easily, a decade later, her case remains cold. And family and friends continue to fight for justice for Aliza, but each year on the anniversary of her death, they come together to mourn, to tell stories, but more importantly, to ensure that her legacy lives on. It's Sunday, March 24th, 2013 in downtown Cleveland, Ohio, a city with a population of about 400,000. 53-year-old Aliza Sherman, a nurse and mother of four, was on her way to meet with her divorce attorney, Gregory Moore. Aliza and her estranged husband, Dr. Sanford Sherman, were in the process of a divorce, and the trial was just a few days away. Aliza wasn't looking forward to the trial, but she was looking forward to starting the next chapter in her life. But unfortunately, Aliza would never get that opportunity. And she was almost to her destination, 75 Erie View Plaza. It was about 5 p.m., it's broad daylight, and there's plenty of people out on the streets, so she didn't think that she was in any danger, but she was wrong. Suddenly and without warning, Aliza was attacked and stabbed 11 times, and then just as quickly as it happened, it was over. Her attacker fled, leaving Aliza on the sidewalk fighting for her life. And from the fourth floor of 75 Erie View Plaza, Kenneth Shepard heard what he thought were screams. And when he looked out the window, he just couldn't believe what he saw. He saw Aliza lying on the sidewalk, bleeding. So he hurried down the stairs and ran as fast as he could to be by Aliza's side to see if he could help her, dialing 911 on his way there. And first responders arrived within minutes and rushed Aliza to the hospital. And while doctors did everything they could, just a few hours after she was attacked, Aliza was gone. And that's when they saw the extent of her injuries. Though it happened fast, the attack was horrific. She had stab wounds all over her body, to include her back, her neck, and even her face. And at the start of the investigation, police had a lot of questions, but no answers. And they started this investigation with no suspect. So their first question was why? What was the motive? What would cause someone to do this to her? Well, they noticed that nothing had been stolen from Aliza, so robbery was ruled out almost immediately. And then it became clear homicide was the intent from the start. And in a city so large with plenty of people around, police thought they would have a lot of witnesses to talk to, but somehow there weren't any. How was that? In a busy city in broad daylight, that the only person that heard or saw anything was Kenneth Shepard from the fourth floor of a nearby building. Now, did people see what happened and they just didn't want to get involved? Those are questions that police had, and Aliza's family and friends wanted answers to those questions as well. In an interview years later, Aliza's son Jason said at a vigil for his mom, "It's a harsh reality. As I was looking out as my sister was talking and I saw 50 cars drive by and 50 people walk by. This was the time 9 years ago in the middle of the day, and it was sunny outside, and my mom was stabbed 11 times. It is impossible no one saw anything." While no witnesses came forward, police did notice there was a surveillance camera outside of 75 Erie View Plaza, and they were anxious to see the footage. Could this have been the first big break in the case? Well, unfortunately, it wasn't. It was just the first of many disappointments. The camera didn't capture the crime itself, just a suspect running away in very bulky clothing, and the quality of the video, well, that didn't help either. Police were left with a grainy video with a suspect in extremely bulky clothing, and it was so hard to see they couldn't get a good description. In fact, it was so bad they couldn't even tell the gender of the suspect. But as bad as it was, it's all they had, so they released the video to the news media. And after it was aired on their broadcast that night, well, no one came forward with any information. But police were not deterred. They continued to investigate and tried to solve this crime. And the next logical step is obviously to talk to the friends and family of Aliza. And when your victim and her estranged husband are going through a contentious divorce, well, that is a great place to start. Police spoke with Dr. Sherman to find out the details of their relationship. They found the couple had been married for over 30 years, but not all of those years were great. Aliza discovered her husband had an affair from 2006 to 2010, And the couple stayed together and tried to work on the marriage, but eventually Aliza filed for divorce on June 20th of 2011. As the couple were going through their divorce, more details came to light. Confiding in a rabbi, Aliza said that she had been battling and struggling with a very controlling, hurtful spouse for many years. And she was so concerned for her safety, she had actually sent herself an email in 2012 saying she was worried he may try to kill her. And then another huge secret, hidden money. Aliza found that he was moving money from their joint account into a private account. And while Aliza wasn't aware of this private account, it was in her name. And just how much he siphoned off their joint account? A staggering $2 million. But even with the details of a messy divorce discovered, Sanford Sherman was never charged with any crime. In fact, he never even rose to the level of suspect in the eyes of law enforcement. Now, the investigation did lead to charges being filed, but they were filed against someone no one would expect, Aliza's attorney, Gregory Moore. See, on the day of the murder, Moore contacted Aliza multiple times to change the time that they're going to meet. He also told law enforcement he texted her twice more that afternoon, once before she was murdered and once directly after she was attacked. And while waiting on phone records to come back, police continued their investigation into Gregory Moore, and they found the trial between Aliza and her soon-to-be ex-husband was delayed multiple times by Gregory Moore. He asked for several continuances, telling the judge he just wasn't ready for trial. And the more police investigated, the more they found. They actually found out that the courthouse had received 2 bomb threats. And looking into those bomb threats, they found out that they were actually called in by Gregory Moore. Just more bizarre delay tactics by him. Now, Gregory Moore was eventually charged with 2 counts of inducing panic for calling in those bomb threats. And while those charges are strange to say the least, there was another charge that really raised some eyebrows. You remember those changes Moore made on the day of the murder and the 2 texts he sent right before and right after she was attacked? Well, police looked into his phone records to confirm his story, but there was an issue. Gregory Moore wasn't even in his office when he texted Aliza. He had lied to police about his whereabouts. But why? Moving the meeting time and then texting right before and directly after Aliza was murdered is certainly suspicious. And saying he texted her right before and after kind of seems like he was building an alibi of sorts. But the very phone records that proved he wasn't in his office also proved he wasn't near the scene of the murder. So even though they couldn't figure out why he lied, they didn't have anything connecting him directly to Aliza's murder. All they could do was charge him with another felony count of lying to police. He eventually pled guilty to those charges in 2017 and was sentenced to just 6 months, and of course he's not allowed to practice law anymore. And during a court hearing, Aliza's daughter Jennifer said Greg Moore has had 1,522 days and countless opportunities to aid in seeking her justice since her vicious death. Yet instead, he's admitted that he lied to law enforcement about his whereabouts and continues to sit here today without explaining himself or sharing what he knows. And as of right now, he's not been charged with any other crimes since. Now, while Aliza's husband wasn't charged with anything, he did find himself in a courtroom about a year later. In May of 2014, Jennifer filed a lawsuit against her father for the $2 million he'd hidden from Aliza. She wanted that money paid to Aliza's estate. Well, her father claimed he wasn't hiding it, but it was used to pay for family expenses. But the lawsuit alleged otherwise. It was argued that the money was actually paid to settle a defamation lawsuit Aliza never knew about, but it was also paid for strippers. Now, if we take all but $250,000 and say that that went towards the defamation lawsuit, and you had $250,000 left over for strippers. Now, I'm no mathematician, but if you take the 250 and multiply, that's a lot of damn lap dances. That's all I'm saying. But all joking aside, emails were also included in the lawsuit that showed Aliza was scared of her estranged husband. She wrote, "He will stop at nothing to hurt me. I don't think I will ever be safe. I am really afraid he is going to have me killed. I am of sound mind. I just know him. His behavior is very odd. Blank looks, very scary." And it wasn't just Aliza that was afraid of him. Jennifer was also afraid of her father. As part of the lawsuit, she did have to testify in a deposition, but she requested a protection order against her father while she testified. And finally, and what is extremely suspicious, was the testimony of one of Dr. Sherman's friends, Larry Shanker. In Shanker's deposition, he said Dr. Sherman had asked him how he might commit the perfect murder. And Shanker said he replied, "Don't use your car or don't let it be seen, and don't use a gun because it can be heard." Don't use your street clothes. Use something that would cover up your entire body, your hands, and your face. Which, when you think about it, it kind of sounds like that very grainy surveillance video when you saw a figure running away in extremely bulky clothing, not being able to tell any type of description or gender of the suspect. Even with the hidden money, Aliza's claims that he was dangerous, and Larry Shanker's testimony, there was nothing that directly tied Dr. Sherman to the murder. So even with a mountain of suspicion against him, Dr. Sherman has not faced any charges. Now, the lawsuit was eventually settled when Dr. Sherman agreed to pay $115,000 to Aliza's estate. Well, Cleveland police continued to investigate the case, but they eventually ran out of leads and their investigation was going nowhere. So in 2021, the Ohio Bureau of Investigations, though they took over the case, they had more manpower, more technology, and they were hoping that they could eventually solve the case. But unfortunately, even with all of their efforts, they never were able to develop any leads and the case remains cold. While it's important to continue to bring awareness to Aliza's unsolved homicide, the family is also focused on remembering the wonderful person she was. Jennifer was told by a friend of hers, "Do not let this day and what happened to your mom define who she was." And Jennifer took those words to heart. She thought, what if we flood this space, a space that is so dark and difficult for us to come to, with color and with life and with flowers? It's a message out there to whoever did this. You will not get away with it, and you will never steal her from us. So each year, family and friends gather at that very spot where Aliza was taken from them to continue to remind people that not just that her case is unsolved, but to also share stories and memories of just how wonderful of a person she was. Like one memory from Jan Lash, who was Aliza's best friend. Aliza sent a text to Jan on the day of her murder that said, "I don't know what I did to deserve a best friend who never gave up on me or our friendship." And as difficult as it is to think that that was the last text she sent to Jan, it shows just how great of a friend Aliza was. At the annual vigil for Aliza in 2022, Jan said, "If only I could have you back for just a little while, then we could sit and talk again just like we used to. You always meant so much to me and always will. The fact that you're no longer here will cause me pain, but forever you're in my heart until we meet again." And Aliza's legacy and love for others will continue to live on in another special way. Jennifer worked with the Cleveland Clinic, where her mom was a nurse, to create the Aliza Sherman Fund. In a statement Jennifer wrote to Dateline, she said, "Aliza's fund will provide support to Cleveland Clinic patients and caregivers who have experienced violence, as well as implement awareness and prevention programs." Aliza's case is still active today, with the Ohio BCI continuing to investigate and process any evidence they find. There is a reward of $100,000 for any information that leads to an arrest in this case. And now that's the largest reward ever offered in Cuyahoga County. So if you have any information, please call 216-252-7463. And of course, any information can remain anonymous. Aliza deserves justice, and her family and friends deserve closure. To have someone who was so great taken away so brutally is terrible. But it's even made worse knowing the killer remains free. But no matter what happens with the investigation, family and friends will continue to gather at 75 Erie View Plaza on each year on March 24th. They'll mourn together, but more importantly, they will honor her memory and celebrate the love and joy she brought to so many. Well, that's everything for Aliza's case. Please be sure to subscribe, because each podcast episode we talk about an unsolved homicide or a missing persons case. And we want to get as many people as we can to watch these things, because you never know who might have information that leads to a homicide being solved or a missing person being found. There's nothing better than justice being served for the victim and a difficult chapter being closed for the family and friends they left behind. So again, my name is Jason. This is Crime on the Record, and we'll see you next week.